You're listening to the Southampton Dellivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
If you want to have guarantees, you have to buy a washing machine.
Fonte with a scooping header.
We don't lose a match, either we win or we learn. And today we learned.
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Bella. Onside, 1-0. Buffon shot. Oh my word.
Unbelievable. He ran around the pitch like Bambi on ice. It was very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southampton Dellivery Podcast, a podcast and newsletter dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans, available right here on southamptondelivery.com. My name is Matt Markstone. I am the host of the show, and no matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, whether this is your first time or you've been here before, thanks for making the show part of your day. I hope that you enjoy it. And if this is your first time, let me just give you a quick rundown on things that you can count on. You can count on this show coming out each and every Tuesday, as it has for the past 192 weeks. If you excuse me, the third episode, mostly because I can't do math. Other things you can count on: Saints not winning on the opening day in the Premier League, and all of our optimism coming back to really bite us. Those are all things you can pretty much count on. But you know what? It's over with now. It's not the end of the world. It's just the start of the season. And I'm glad we got that one out of the way. And hopefully going forward, Saints can play, get back to playing the way they were towards the end of last season. And as long as it doesn't take all the way until the end of the season for them to get there, I think we'll all be happy. Joining me this week to talk about the game, to talk about your questions and everything else, is Tom Murray. You can find him on Twitter at T214Murray. He's been on the show a number of times. He is the co-host or one of the hosts of the Under the Lights podcast, which is another Southampton podcast that you can listen to. And the links, of course, are in the show notes. He also works at Radio Solon and does the audio description commentary for The Blind and Partially Sighted at St. Mary's, brought to you by Alan March Sports. So if you don't follow Tom already, you should. He's going to hopefully bring a dose of positivity to me, because I'll be honest, when I started talking to him this morning, I was not really in a great mood. But you know what? Tom cheered me up, and that's just about what he always does. So let's jump into the show now. Thank you so much for being here. I hope that you enjoy it, and hopefully you're having a good week. We'll talk to you on the other side. I'd like to welcome back to the Southampton Dellivery Podcast, Tom Murray. You can find him on Twitter at T214Murray. You can also get his podcast, Under the Lights, at _Saints on Twitter. Tom, we've done this now a few times. You know how it works, and you got to take the good with the bad. And this time, I guess it's a little bit of bad, and maybe we'll find some good in there to talk about as well. But welcome back to the show, and thanks for joining me.
No, thank you very much for having me on. Yeah, hopefully we can spin a positive light on what is a disappointing start. But again, it's really great to come on. I always enjoy coming onto the podcast. So thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah. And thanks again for continuing to support the show via Patreon. I do appreciate that as well. So we just got to start. I mean, brand new Premier League season, kind of excited. Everybody's coming into it. And The Athletic ran a poll for their subscribers. I don't know if you're an Athletic subscriber or not. But we lost Carl, who got his own, we should say, I'm just going to say this is positive to start the show because we're trying to be positive here. Carl's has his own column now. He's a columnist for The Athletic. He's not just a team reporter. So every Friday he'll have a column and it'll be something about football from Carl, which I think is what we all want. Because when he was writing some of those stories for Saints, it was like, well, this is an interesting take, and this is something different. And now I think we're going to get more of that. And it doesn't just have to be Man United, which I think is a big plus for me.
Yeah, I like Carl's content. I like the stuff that he was putting on Twitter as well. He made it for someone who is not a Southampton fan. He made it seem like he was on Twitter and was a big fan of everything, referring to Danny Ings and James Ward-Prowse as my boys, as it were. And so I really liked his content, and I was really pleased for him to see that he got the upgrade to Manchester United, the team that he does support.
Yeah, and I guess the only real loss, I mean, we lose in that situation because we lose Carl, but also he loses because he loses Sunshine, and he has to go to Manchester, but that's okay. And you know, if you follow him on Instagram, if for anybody who's on Instagram, he is still very much he was still rooting on the boys yesterday. So I'm happy. I'm happy to have Carl, happy to have had the experience with Carl that I did get to have, having him on the show, just chatting with him a couple of times. He's a great dude. But the reason I bring up The Athletic is they ran a poll, and 98.9% of Southampton fans felt optimistic going into the season. We topped the table. You know, we beat out Chelsea and Arsenal and Leeds to top the table. At 98.9% of us felt optimistic. I can't remember if I voted in there, but if I voted, I definitely did vote that I was optimistic. At the very bottom of that table, though, was West Ham, which is probably, I mean, I hope it's where they finish, but West Brom are also down there, mostly because they have Charlie Austin running around up top. But I mean, we had that yesterday. Is it all gone now? If we ran that today, would we be down, you know, mid-table where you would think? Because I guess it just says that The Athletic is a much different place than Twitter. I think that's what I've mostly learned about that. I think
that with that one, I think you would probably have Saints fall down towards mid-table, but that's because football fans, you know, it's a win or lose. It's doom and gloom, or like if we'd beaten Crystal Palace yesterday, then we'd be like, oh, we could really challenge, you know, for the top 6 or whatever. And now that we've lost, people are starting to fret, well, when are we actually going to get our first point? You know, it's the first game of the season. I'm still very optimistic about the season. You know, unfortunately, we didn't get the result that we wanted yesterday, but there's still 37 games to play. So there's a lot to happen. And let's not forget that last season we started with a 3-0 away defeat after a lot of optimism, and as I recall, that season didn't exactly end too badly.
No, we seemed to be all right last season, and you know, it's better to start slow and finish strong than do the opposite, because then you just go into the summer feeling like, you know, you really lost it when actually you did okay. But anyway, let's talk about a little bit about the match. Obviously, a big blow to Saints. We all kind of expected the same starting lineup that we kind of went into ended last season with. But Armstrong is out with an injury that he suffered on duty for Scotland. Ralph not happy with the way Scotland has taken care of the players. So if you're listening, tell your wife to talk to her national team and get things sorted out, because we could use Stuart Armstrong doing a little bit better than not being able to play for us. But I mean, no surprises for me in the lineup. Obviously, Romeu was going to replace Højbjerg because Højbjerg's not there, except maybe the decision to start Smallbone for Armstrong, or replace Armstrong with him. Was that a surprise for you? And would you have rather have seen Djenepo in there, or what were your feelings on the lineup and the way we set up?
And it was at this exact moment,
Tom, are you there?
that the optimism for this episode went down the drain. Mostly just from me. Tom was still bringing it, but
Tom, can you hear me?
His internet went out, computer went out, and so we had to redo things on the phone. So we'll pick it up here. Sound quality a little bit different, so you know, stick with it. We'll do the best we can. It's not the end. It's just, I guess it's just the beginning. Maybe there's a metaphor there. Maybe I'm trying too hard. Maybe I haven't slept enough. I don't know. Enjoy the rest of the show.
It was an expected lineup for me. I thought that with Armstrong out, and apparently he's out now for a few more games as well, which is a bit of a disappointment, I thought it'd be a bit surprising if Djenepo was going to start. And that was purely because he didn't have any minutes after Project Restart last season, and Smallbone had been played as that sort of inside forward, as it were, on the right side. And he was used to that position, and that's how Ralph had put him in a couple of games last season. So, I mean, that was the only position that was any real deliberation about. As for the rest of the team, had no problems whatsoever. That's the team that we used for the majority of the end of last season. So it worked, and I had no qualms with it. I know a lot of people wanted Djenepo on that right side, and I think now in hindsight, maybe he should have been used. But at the start of the game, I was looking at that and I was thinking, yeah, I'm happy with that. That's as close to a full first 11 as we can get.
Yeah, I think the only real issue with the small ball over there is it's just probably not quite as much creativity, but you figure if we have, I mean, Armstrong tends to tuck in a little bit and play slightly more narrow than Redmond on the opposite side, and that allows Kyle Walker-Peters to get up and down the pitch. But I thought Crystal Palace really exploited that as well, because Walker-Peters was pushed up quite high for a lot of the match, and it allowed Zaha to run in behind, or Schlepp to run in behind quite a few times. Especially, we seemed to correct it a little bit, I guess, early in the second half, and then as we pushed forward when Djenepo was on, actually, towards the end of the second half. Obviously, Crystal Palace had a couple of more chances, but I don't think we can complain about the team that was out there. We just looked a little bit, slow. We looked a little bit ponderous on the ball. We looked like we didn't know how to break teams down, and those are not new criticisms of the team, I don't think.
No, they're certainly not. What we did was we sort of committed the cardinal sin of going 1-0 down to a Roy Hodgson team. And we know, and any team will know, that if you go 1-0 down to Crystal Palace, that they're, especially when they've got so many key players out, they're going to put everyone behind the ball and be more than happy for Saints to try and break them down, because we know over the past few seasons, if a team puts about 10 men behind the ball, then Saints really are a bit of a loss. And it almost was like the Crystal Palace home game last season, where they went 1-0 up, and then suddenly we were thinking, oh, how on earth are we getting back into this game, because they're just going to be solid. And he sets them up well, does Roy Hodgson. And defensively, very solid, very compact. They crowded the middle and made it difficult for Saints to get through. And the only reason we got back into that home game was because one of their defenders played an awful back pass that Danny Ings managed to run in and score on. So that bit of luck that we needed just didn't come our way yesterday. It's a disappointing start, but I thought, especially in the first 20 minutes or so, where we did play quite well, what we did, I think, was maybe get a bit overconfident, and the high line was so high that when a mistake came about from us, Palace, they're a Premier League side, they punished us.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a couple of other notes on that lineup. In terms of the subs, Forster on the bench for Gunn, does that to you signal what may be happening there in terms of Gunn going out on loan? And if that is the case, is that gonna bother you at all?
I think that does indicate that Forster is going to be, the number 2, and I'd expect Forster to start on Wednesday. Listen, Gunn had a lot of promise, and he was used quite a lot in like Ralph's first half season, as it were, and then obviously he was in goal for that particular game that commentators love mentioning within about 10 seconds of every match. And he's never, I don't think he's been involved in the side since. So I think Gunn needs regular football. I think he does have high potential, and he could be a really good keeper in the future. But at the moment, I think his confidence is probably rock bottom. And, the fact that Ralph isn't even willing to throw him in to any match, it seems. And that's credit to Alex McCarthy, because he's been in top form. But at the moment, I think Gunn needs game time. He needs to build that confidence up. And if he can get regular game time at a championship club, or, wherever we decide to send him out, then I think that will be for the benefit of Saints, because there's a good keeper in there. But Fraser Forster has just come back from Celtic, having an absolute storming season now. I know it's in Scotland, where the opposition aren't exactly the best players on the planet, but his confidence is going to be sky high. So to have 2 keepers now who have, on the back of decent seasons, I think for me, Forster's got to be the second in command, as it were.
Yeah, I think that's the way it's going to be. And my only concern there is both McCarthy and Forster are getting, I think they are either at the age where keepers are at their best, or they're just past it. And so they're not. I don't think they're going to improve a whole lot. And Gunn still has a lot of room to improve. So if we can, we spent a considerable amount of money on him. So to keep him around, even if it means going on loan and bringing him back to the club with a little bit more confidence, because if you give up 9 goals, your confidence as a goalkeeper probably goes away a little bit. And especially, I mean, I don't blame Ralph for pulling him out of the team after that, because the team needed to have a reshuffle. But having that happen can't be great for your confidence. That's gotta hurt a little bit at least. And so he's going to need to go and find a way to just get that confidence back, get back in the swing of things. And because, as you said, he is a good keeper, and I mean, just his passing is better than McCarthy's, which was on display a couple of times yesterday. But anyway, the start of the game, as you said, started okay. Had obviously a lot of possession throughout. Not able to really work any real clear chances though, and I don't know if that's a criticism of the team, or it's just the first game, or it's just because Crystal Palace were basically saying, here, have the ball and good luck. And you see teams all over the Premier League and all over Europe and everywhere else in the world playing football that if you just sit people behind the ball, you become difficult to beat. And that happens with it doesn't matter who you're playing against or whatever. We've done it to teams. We did it to Man City and other people, but it is a difficult thing to break down a team that is well organized, and that, coming into it would have just said, this is the game plan. Roy Hodgson kind of executed it, and they did a good job. So I think we have to give Crystal Palace at least a little bit of credit for what happened.
Oh, absolutely. They had a game plan. They stuck to it, and they let us have the ball. And we know at the moment, especially under Hasenhüttl, that we play much better when we don't have it. And they set up really, really well. They made it hard. As much as we dominated possession for the first 20 minutes, you're right, we didn't really have any chances to test the goalkeeper. And I think the closest we got to maybe half a chance was when the ball sort of dropped in the box and Danny Ings just tried to see if he could stab it away from the defender, and Crystal Palace managed to get it away. Mm-hmm. So, their game plan worked, and they went down the left side a lot because that's, their strongest position. They got Zaha, and when he's on his game, there aren't too many players in the Premier League that are better than him. And unfortunately for us, it was his day after all of the hype between him, the coming together between him and Ward-Prowse.
Yeah, and obviously Zaha did have a good day against us. He is a good player. We've given him quite a bit of stick over the past couple of seasons, and I think for good reason. Saints were hoping to win at Selhurst Park for, I think, the 4th consecutive season. Crystal Palace had struggled at home on opening day. It had been a while since they had won there. I can't find the exact stat, but at the end of the day, it doesn't work out, but we do. We move on, right? And then that's just what we have to do.
Yeah, we've got to move on. There's still 37 games to play, and nothing is ever won on the first game. And what's also good is the fact that this isn't a defeat, and then we're going into like an international break, and there's 2 weeks to have it on our minds and think about it. I suppose a positive of the season starting a bit late is now there's a lot shorter time to fit in all the games, and therefore the games are going to come really quickly. And we've got Brentford on Wednesday, and it's immediate chance to put it right. Ralph has hinted that he wants to play a really strong team, and just keep it. In a way, there's no real reason to rest players because this is the first game we've had the first game of the season, and you want to build up the chemistry. So if we can go into the Brentford game, get a couple of goals, get our confidence back up, and then we can head into next weekend against Spurs, who is strange. But if you look at the games against Palace and Spurs, I'd almost say that I'm more confident about getting a result against Spurs because they will play a game that Saints can play their A game against. Spurs will want to come forward, and that's when teams want to come at Southampton. That is when we play our best, because that's when the counter press really actually works, because you can't press. It's yesterday, you can't press against a team that doesn't want to come forward.
Yeah, well, you can't. It's hard to press against a team who is compressed, and they basically backed themselves into their own penalty area and made it so there was nothing left to press. And in that regard, I mean, we did see teams do that to us last season. It's something we're going to have to adjust to. But as I said earlier, I think it's difficult, and you see what games can look like when you watch that Leeds Liverpool match, because both teams wanted to play football. And if you show up and want to play football and put on a show, that happens. If you show up and trying to grind out a point at home on opening day to really get your fan base going, then, you get what Roy Hodgson did to us yesterday, which, to be fair, worked, but not the spectacle that I think a lot of people would have hoped for, which, maybe will be the reason that maybe it will be the reason that Crystal Palaces aren't that exciting to watch most of the time.
No, and I think that Liverpool against Leeds match shows what football can be all about, and I think that I believe that Palace will probably be down near the bottom of the table come the end of the season. Whether they'll get relegated, I'm not so sure, because with Eze and they're rumoured to sign a couple of other players, they still have a solid team, and obviously, as you said, with Roy Hodgson, they know how to grind out a result. Whereas some other teams may be a bit more naive about things. And Palace, it's not pretty, and I guess it's good that their fans weren't there yesterday, because that's the kind of football that they are going to be playing this season. They are going to be getting some scrappy wins, but it's effective, and if it works, then if Saints had done exactly the same yesterday and come away with a win that they probably didn't deserve, and had defended for the rest of the game, then we'd be more than happy to be starting the season with 3 points.
Yeah. So we can't have it both ways. If we do it to Man City and come away with a win, we say it's heroic defending and everything else. I like to think we looked a little bit better when we did it against them than Crystal Palace did against us. But we should talk about the goal very, very quickly, because it comes from a giveaway from Romeu or Redmond. I think it's Romeu's mistake, honestly. Kind of plays a pass into a crowded area and then steps towards the ball, which allows Crystal Palace to win it and then play it behind to Townsend, who, to be fair, put in a decent cross, chose not to just knock it across the 6-yard area as hard as he could, but he did kind of pick out Zaha with a nice finish. Kyle Walker-Peters pushed high up the pitch because we had possession at that point. We were trying to get into an attacking area, so he can't recover. It's one of those things where we if we don't give the ball away there, we probably don't concede a goal all day, but we did, and it happens, and we were punished for it. And I guess we just have to, try not to make those mistakes. But I think this also goes back to one of the things where we're not quite good enough to make a mistake, give up a goal, and then recover from it. We're still, I guess that's the quality we still don't have, because it makes it, as you said earlier, it makes it extremely difficult to go and break down a team who already has the goal, who doesn't need to go forward. And then they just got to play on the counter, which is exactly what they wanted to do with our back line pressing so high up the pitch.
Yeah, we don't quite have. We're not there yet. If we go a goal down and a team decides to defend for the rest of the match, then we will struggle. I'm just trying to think of games last season where we went behind, and one that comes to mind is when we were away to Man United, and they went 2-1 up, but they're Man United, and they came at us to try and get a third and a fourth. They're not going to shut up shop for the rest of the game, because if they'd taken their first half lead against Southampton and then defended for the rest of the game, their fans will be thinking, well, what on earth are we doing? But that allowed Saints to therefore get back into the game and come back at them. Yeah, when we did, we managed to score at the last minute of the game to equalise, when Man United were putting a few players behind the ball. But the way that they played meant that we had more of a chance to break them down, just purely because they were still putting players forward. When you're playing against Crystal Palace, they tighten everything up and they do it very effectively, and we just don't. Unfortunately, I think the substitution of taking Smallbone off for Genepo was made too late. And then you think about the players that you have, and Romeu and Ward-Prowse, as good as they are in the middle, they don't, when the team is so compact, it's not, they don't exactly find the through ball that we needed. And then with Redmond and Genepo, there's no one who can play that, that killer pass suddenly through their back line and feed into Ings. It's a very much quite a direct pressing. As soon as we get the ball, we run at them and try and get them down the flanks and the space. Whereas with Redmond and Smallbone especially, he's a good player, but attacking mid is not his position. I think he's a very mature midfielder, and I think he's more in central midfield, maybe in Romeu's position. He's not an attacking influence. And to be fair, he's played out of position. I think he's still a really good young player, and he will get better. But I don't think his position is sort of like that inside forward on the right side is not where he can flourish, because he's not that player who can perform that mouth-watering pass to to the striker.
Yeah, and that's something that Armstrong has done so well is, I think at times he's played more centrally in the past, but he has adapted to that position and tucked in a little bit and been able to play some of those passes and create opportunities. And like you said, I would have been okay had Smallbone started for Romeu and then Djenepo played where in Armstrong's position. I think that would have been okay, knowing how Crystal Palace were going to approach the match, but Ralph chose not to do that. He chose to stick with that central midfield pairing that he kind of ran with towards the end of last season. So I can't criticize him very much, but as you said, Romeu and James Prowse not necessarily going to be unlocking defenses, and we, quite frankly, we can't expect them to do it all. And I'm not sure Højbjerg does that either. So I don't know how we're, necessarily what we're missing, other than it's a difficult skill. We don't have anybody in the team that can do that at this point, and that's not the way we're set up. So we're just going to have to kind of adjust going forward. But by halftime, we had been exposed with the high line. There had been a couple of balls that Crystal Palace tried to play through by just kind of getting in the way of a pass and then trying to knock it through right away. I think Stevens had gotten in the way of a couple, Bednarik had gotten in the way of a couple, but it just seemed like we were one lofted ball over the top from chasing Zaha into our own penalty area, which we saw very late on. But come halftime, like you said, there was no kind of probing passes. There was nothing like that, but we had 72% possession. The shots were even, the shots on target were even, but really not a lot to write home about in terms of there. And I guess I was kind of asking myself, what do I want to see from Saints? And I wasn't sure that I wanted to see Bednarik taken off. But I mean, what did you make of that, substitution for Vestergaard coming on for Bednarik? And I'll be honest that I only watched the first half and the second half, and I thought Vestergaard looked really good. And then this morning before we started recording, I watched the second half of the second half. So I guess the last quarter of the game, and Vestergaard did not necessarily look as good. So what was your take on that substitution that Ralph made?
Initially, I thought Bednarik must be injured. I didn't understand why, we're chasing a game, why you bring on a centre-back. So at the time that it was made, I was thinking, oh, he's got a knock and we've got to bring on Vestergaard. And then as you sort of understood it, as the first part of the second half went on, he was able to play like the diagonal balls, and Palace, their out ball was, I know they tried to get it lofted over to Zaha, but a lot of the time if Saints were pushing up on them, then their only real out ball was then just to hoof it long. And if Saints have got Vestergaard in the defence, who is, a couple of feet taller than the majority of the players on the pitch, then that's a way for Saints to immediately get possession back, rather than, Bednarik having a physical battle with IU, and then suddenly it's bouncing around the Southampton half and we don't have control of the ball. Whereas with Vestergaard, we can get possession immediately. So I then understood why he made that, but it did limit us, I think, for the majority for the rest of the game, purely because Vestergaard doesn't have the pace, and that meant that Ryan Bertrand couldn't go forward as much down the left, because he knew if he was caught high up the pitch, then Palace would have the pace down the right to exploit that with Vestergaard. Yeah.
And as you mentioned, the diagonal balls from Vestergaard, initially that was working. We were finding Kyle Walker-Peters quite frequently. Eventually, I think Bertrand tried a couple as well and just didn't quite have enough on them to get them all the way over there. But, I would say at least we had something different to offer. And I was expecting Stevens to be replaced by Vestergaard, simply because of the what looked to be an injury to him early in the first half. And I just assumed that when I saw Vestergaard getting ready that it was going to be for Stevens, and then it wasn't. And, Bednarik had played, I think, every match or almost every match since Ralph Hasenhüttl had taken over. And I don't think we're going to see a full-sale switch between the two. I don't think Bednarik's going to lose his place or anything, but I just think that what we were looking for in this match was we were going to have so much of the ball that we needed to be able to do something different with it. And so you bring in Vestergaard, you can play that diagonal, and hope that you can be that. And I saw several people on Twitter commenting on the fact that Vestergaard's passing is underrated. He can definitely hit it hard and long, and with some sort of direction, at least better than McCarthy. But I do want to say, talk about a couple of things. I think VAR making an early bid to be our player of the season yet again, in terms of coming to our rescue. John Moss tries to send off Kyle Walker-Peters, is encouraged to go to the monitor, which is something new. And I think that they go into the monitor when the VAR official says to you, hey, you should check the monitor. That's a little bit like, your parent telling you, hey, you should really consider that decision, or your teacher telling you something like, hey, you should probably check number 4. I don't think, just give it a once over, because obviously that means you've made a mistake. But what's your take on the VAR monitor situation and Jonathan Moss, and then the red card being taken back and only a yellow being shown to Kyle Walker-Peters?
Well, when I saw the initial challenge, I didn't immediately think red card. I thought, oh, that potentially could be something. And then obviously the red card came out, and it was a case of, that's sort of ruined. That's nailed us for a loss for the rest of the game. And then I looked at the replay, and I thought that he hadn't actually made any contact. Obviously, the foot's high, and I was thinking, that's a bit harsh, but I can understand why he's given the red. And then for him to go over to the monitor, that's when you start thinking, okay, I think Walker-Peters is going to stay on the pitch here. And I was really glad that I think what we need is referees to use VAR as much as possible if there's any doubt whatsoever, because they're human. Humans make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. And I think last season, sometimes maybe they were defended a bit too much, because obviously the referees, you don't want to admit that the man in the middle is getting it wrong, right. And they don't want to be saying that their referees are getting it wrong all the time. But if you're going to introduce VAR, you've got to use it. The argument with me, for me, is that there's nothing wrong with the technology. It's the interpretation of it by the humans that use it. So when people say, oh, VAR is awful, it's not. The technology is absolutely fine and it's correct. It's just the interpretation and how people use it. And I really like the fact that John Moss sort of went over to the monitor, and it sort of when you go to the monitor, you're agreeing and you're just owning up to the fact that you do get it wrong. Yeah. And he's looked at it, he's had another look, and that has now aided him to make the correct decision, because if Walker-Peters had been sent off for that, it would have been really, really quite harsh. If I was a Palace fan, I would probably be thinking it is harsh, but I can see why he's being sent off. But for them to actually go and then reverse the decision, I thought that was a really good use of VAR.
Yeah.
Because whilst you have seen them given in the past, I think it would have been a really, really, really harsh red card. And then obviously he's cautioned him with a yellow, which was the right decision in the first instance.
Yeah, the challenge is late. The foot is high. Like it's definitely worth the caution there. And I can understand how he gives him the red card initially based on kind of where he was standing, I guess. But I'm glad that he did go to the monitor. And that's something that's new this season. They're going to encourage the referees to do. And you think, like, if you're the guy sitting there and you're the VAR official, you don't really want to criticize, like you said, the other referee, because at some point the roles could be reversed, and you don't want to. They are going to be seen to kind of be taking care of one another, I guess, to an extent, and to allow the referee to make his own decision and to see it again. And I think it's important because now he's taking what he saw live and also seeing, is this the same thing I see when I watch it back, versus the rest of us are just seeing it on TV. We're not getting kind of the full picture. Even if we have a bunch of different angles, we're not on the pitch, and I think things are different on the pitch from that level. And so I'm glad that he was able to go over. And I think that actually people going to the monitor is going to be better. I think we'll actually probably see more decisions reversed now than we did last season. And I'm sure somebody from The Athletic will dig into that and do something on that. But so anyway, I was glad that it got overturned, obviously, because I was, after the first half, we didn't really look very good. We were down 1-0. We were not creating chances. And then Kyle Walker-Peters, somebody we were all super excited about, was due to be sent off. And I think straight red like that, I think that means multiple matches missing. And that was not going to be what we needed going into the season. So glad it helps. Now Vestergaard also came into the match, and we have another VAR decision later on to talk about, but we'll just quickly jump to this. So Vestergaard comes in, hits a couple of diagonals, then he gets to a header, and we nearly level the scoring with Adams making great contact, and the Palace keeper coming up with a save to keep us out.
Yeah, we did. When I saw it, I thought that's got to be going in, and it's an incredible save. And it's these fine margins. We did create a couple of chances, and on another day, Adams is breaking the back of the net, and we come away with a point, or maybe even 3 points because we've managed to turn the game around. It just what wasn't to be, but it's a really great connection, and I hope that Adams gets a goal soon in this season, because he did exactly the same at the beginning of last season. In terms of, he had really good chances and he was hitting the ball cleanly, but he was hitting the post, or the goalie was making a really good save. And then obviously his confidence went as he kept on not scoring. And for the majority of the season, he was a pretty ineffectual striker. So I hope that he does get one or two early on in the season, because he ended the last season really well. And with that confidence flowing through, we saw just how good a player he can be when he is hitting the back of the net.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you just hope, like you said, you just hope he comes into it and is able to get on the score sheet and get the momentum going. And I think if we do that, I think we're going to have to balance out the scoring a little bit this season. We're going to have to help Ings out a little bit more. And I mean, obviously I wish Adams would have scored that chance, but you can't fault him for what happened on that chance. He did everything the right way. It just didn't work out. And I would say that's really good from Vestergaard to get to the header there. There were a couple of times, though, that he seemed to not jump on corners or free kicks from Palace, where he gave away kind of free headers to the opposition, which is not what I want to see as somebody who is, I think, 6'6". Like, I need you to head the ball on both sides of the pitch. Like, I need you to head it out of our penalty area and then, like, get to it in theirs as well. So that happens. I guess, I mean, trying to think about other big kind of points in the match, I don't really think there was a lot until Zaha was called offside on the ball over the top, where the linesman did the same thing again, where they kept the flag down. They allowed the play to play all the way out. Palace scored. They then went back and reviewed it and took it away. So it was a tight decision, but I think it was the right decision. And we were playing with fire a little bit at that point, but I think the right decision made once again.
Yeah, the right decision was made. He was offside. As tight as it was, you've got to draw the line somewhere. And unfortunately for Palace, that it was literally just a couple of inches. But I think that showed as well that I say goal in inverted commas, because Saints were so far forwards, they left an incredibly high line, and it just took one ball over the top. And had Zaha timed his run a little bit better, then it would be 2-0 and definitely game over. So Saints definitely let off on that one, but yeah, it was the correct call.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I think the last thing is Ings had a chance there at the very end. It doesn't come off, and that's basically it. Kind of a not a real strong finish from Saints, not a real match to write home about, but something that we can put behind us, knowing that we go into Wednesday with a chance to play at home and a chance to advance in the cup against a team that I think a lot of people wanted to be promoted last season, and they fell kind of just short. So, be honest, not super familiar with Brentford. They haven't been in the Premier League in a while. So, as a, you can call me plastic American fan, whatever. Some of these teams are new. I was excited to have them up because there's a lot of talk about the way they run their club in terms of promoting players and giving players from other teams that have kind of not made the cut, bringing them in and allowing them a second chance, and then selling them on again for a significant amount of money. So I was really looking forward to them coming up, and of course it didn't happen. But we get them in the cup, and I don't know if you are looking forward to that match or not. And then we'll answer a couple of questions from listeners before we get out of here.
I am looking forward to the game purely because it's a game that Saints are involved in, so it's one that you're always excited for, even if it's the second round of the cup or whatever. And I think it's a good opportunity for Saints to put the game against Palace behind them and play a strong team, get a couple of goals. Brentford I was looking forward to having in the Premier League. I think I'd rather have them in the league than Fulham, because I don't think Fulham offer that much, and I think Brentford would have been really exciting. So it's going to be a tough game, that's for sure. Yeah, they've lost a few players, but this is a team that really should have been playing Arsenal on Saturday in the place of Fulham. So it's not going to be easy, and they still run very well, and they will have got good replacements, and they play very good football. They just didn't do it at the right time last season. So it's by no means going to be a 3-4-0 comfortable win for Saints. But it's a good chance to play a strong team, get the loss out of our system, and hopefully start with one game at home, one win.
Yeah, which will be something different for us. And I found my Crystal Palace stat. They had never won at opening day in the Premier League at home. So we set that record straight yesterday by allowing them to do it to us. So there we go. But like you said, it's done now, and we're gonna move on. We have a couple of listener questions. People can always drop their questions on Twitter or Instagram, Facebook, wherever you follow the show. You can do it on the website. There's basically any way you want to get in touch, we can do that. Patrons do have priority for having their questions answered on the show each and every week. But this week we have just a couple of questions from listeners. So first, we have a question from Saints World. You can follow on Instagram at _SaintsWorld_. They say very flat performance, no need to be reactionary, but it shows we need another six role, another defensive midfielder, another person to play alongside Ward-Prowse. What's your kind of approach to that? Ralph mentioned that we do need to improve. We do need to add players to the squad. But what's your interpretation of that question, and how would you address that?
I personally think we need two players in two different positions. I think that obviously we need to get someone in for Højbjerg because we are incredibly light in midfield. I mean, if either Romeo or Ward-Prowse gets injured, then we're left with Smallbone being moved into that position, and then the actual backup on the bench would involve moving players out of position, and it'd just be a youth player. And until we get points on the board, do we really want to be relying on youth players at the moment? I think that. Yeah, we need to get in that number 6. I don't know who it's going to be. The rumours seem to have gone a bit flat. I don't have any knowledge of exactly who we are looking to get. But I'd say another position we do need is one in that sort of fast attacking mid area on the right, because if Armstrong's going to be out for a little bit, then we've seen from the Palace game and from a few games as well previously that Smallbone doesn't offer the attacking threat that we need. So we need someone to go on that right side. Yeah, we've got Genepo as well, but he can be a bit hot and cold. We need someone to, or almost a similar player to Boufal, but Boufal he's so inconsistent, and you just don't know how many chances can you give him to be that player, to be that creative spark that we need. So I think one of the rumours I have seen is Wesley Hoot going to Bruges and us getting a cut price deal on Emmanuel Dennis, who I think is a really quite exciting talent. I think it'd be quite a coup for Saints. So if we could get him on that right side, that'd be a really brilliant addition. But yeah, we do. Those are the two positions we need to get reinforcements. I'd probably concentrate more on the central mid because, as I said, that is incredibly light in terms of squad depth at the moment.
Yeah. I would say that obviously we play with 2 6s in terms of Ward-Prowse and then whoever accompanies him, and most often it was Højbjerg before and then Romeo. But I also think that at a game like yesterday, we just get exposed for not having that creative kind of player that's there. But there aren't a lot of players that are going to do that. There are not a lot of players that can put in the defensive work, do the pressing, and have the ability to break up play and create all of those chances. So you're looking for a very kind of specific skill set. Obviously, we have a price range we have to deal with as well. So I don't think we just need a straight defensive midfielder. We don't want necessarily 2 Romeos sitting next to each other. Not that I'm not criticizing Romeo. If we're going to be in a situation where we're going to have possession, we're going to be forced to break teams down. It's going to be difficult to find that player within our system. And then out wide, I mean, yeah, we do have options in terms of Boufal and Genepo, but you said both of them are kind of inconsistent. And Ralph was asked if Buffal could be one of the players that moves on. He was not even in the squad on Saturday, but they said that was, I think, to allow Tella to spend time with the first team. So I don't know. It's going to be a kind of a wait and see approach, I guess, to see if Ralph or if Buffal does choose to move on. I hadn't heard anything about that until just recently, so we'll just have to wait and see. But a couple of other questions that we have here. Al Capone 156 says, do you think Redmond looked bad, or was it just him that thought that? What was your take on the way Redmond played yesterday? I'll be honest, I didn't notice him doing a whole lot. But what did you make of Redmond's match yesterday, or Saturday, I should say?
I wouldn't particularly single him out. I think it's a case of, as a team collectively, we do struggle to break down teams that do have men behind the ball, and Redmond is a perfect player to have if you're against a team that you can counter against. And we know that if he has got space to run in behind, and we can counter against those particular teams that do like to come out and play football, then he's a perfect player to have, because he can run at the box incredibly quickly. He can carry the ball from one end of the pitch to the other in no time at all. But he's not the kind of player that can unlock a defence, really. He's more of a direct forward. So I don't necessarily think he did poorly yesterday. He had a couple of chances, and when he did get the ball, he did try and run towards the box as much as he could. But it's a case of, the team, everyone was below par yesterday. And as much as Redmond can't do much aside from running it towards the edge of the box, if the whole team are, you're struggling to actually get the final ball to your striker, and the rest of the team aren't exactly on the same level, then anyone's going to look disappointing. There are several players that you can pick out and think. I mean, Danny Ings, 22 goals last season. He had a poor game, but again, he wasn't getting the service. But did we really notice Danny Ings that much on the pitch yesterday? I mean, as much as we love him, he didn't. And yeah, he was feeding off scraps. But in terms of the Danny Ings that we were seeing at the end of last season, where he was coming quite deep, he was creating chances and then finishing them himself by starting off the move. It's the first game of the season. If Redmond continues to be anonymous for the next 5 or 6, then yeah, I'll call him out on it. But it's too early to make that kind of judgment.
Yeah, and especially with only having Djenepo on the bench, really, you could bring on a youngster, but really, there was never any real chance he was going to come off the pitch unless he was just had an absolute shocker. But his rating, according to Who Scored, 6.3. Vestergaard had the best rating of any player at 7.3, but across the pitch, 6s and 7s, which I think sums up the day. And by 7s, I mean there was 1 7 other than Vestergaard, which was Romeu, even though I thought he gave the ball away for that goal. But anyway, that's there. And I think we've kind of addressed another question, in that we had possession, but I don't think it's because we wanted it. I think it's because that's what Crystal Palace gave us to work with. And you could play this thing where you just keep giving them the ball back. You could just lump it up the field and then try to press them, but it didn't really work. And so I don't know if there's really anything to talk about there in terms of, I think we've kind of covered it, where Palace just basically forced us to play the way we did. They were going to give us the ball and try to hit us on the counter. They played like an away team for much of the game, and with no crowd, I guess that's the way it goes. The game against Crystal Palace kicked off at 3 p.m. In the UK, which is 7 a.m. here. Normal, everybody's fine with that. Next week, though, we take on Spurs. I believe the game is at noon in the UK, which means 4 a.m. here. And Al Capone's other question says, how early is too early for a beer? I'll be honest, I didn't drink yesterday, mostly because I had to drive places after and do some things as a family after the match. But 4 a.m. I think might even be pushing it for, you actually can't even buy alcohol in California at 4 a.m. It's against the law from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. to buy alcohol. So how early is too early for a beer? What's the if I have a beer watching Spurs, is that okay?
It's 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't think there's any problem with maybe having 1 or 2. But obviously, if it's a case of we lose and you need to drown your sorrows, then you don't want to exactly be drunk by by 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, that would not be a good start to a Sunday.
No, especially with limited recovery time going into the work week after that. I don't know how you do it. I can say, I think the earliest I've had a beer when we lost to Chelsea in the FA Cup semifinal, maybe a couple of seasons ago. I don't remember. I just remember we were down at some point and I just said, you know what, it's time. But I think that was already like a slightly later kickoff. So I don't know. I don't foresee myself having a beer at 4 a.m. Mostly just because I'll judge myself more than anybody will judge me. But probably extra cups of coffee, get to bed early Saturday night, and just be a whole barrel of fun for my family after that match. Hopefully we get a win. But anyway, I would say that has your enthusiasm for the team, has it dipped at all, or is this just it's a start to the season and we're going to move forward and you're still looking forward to what Ralph and the guys have in store for the rest of the season?
Oh, I'm really looking forward to the rest of the season. It's a disappointment that you don't get off to a good start, but here's a couple of stats for you, because Saints just are notoriously bad at starting seasons. I mean, if anyone's feeling a bit down, first of all, I put out on Twitter that our best start since we got promoted to the Premier League in 2012 was 5 points after 3 games. This is after 3 Premier League games. So our highest points total is 5 points, and that was achieved by Maurizio Pellegrino. And we all know how that season finished. In fact, the season that we finished 6th, the best season we've had, Ronald Koeman had 2 points after the first 3 games. And that was a draw away to Newcastle, a 3-0 home defeat to Everton, and then I think it was a 0-0 draw with Watford, who were newly promoted. And after those 3 games, we were just thinking, what on earth are we watching here? I mean, at that point we had much better players than we did then. We even had like Pella, we had Mane, Tadic. So, I mean, even last season, we didn't get our first win until the 3rd game in. So, obviously, if we haven't won a game in like 5 or 6 games time, then start to get worried. But it's the first game of the season, and who knows, if you and I had this conversation this time next week, we could be talking about 2 wins, a win against Brentford, a win against Spurs, and then suddenly the outlook on the season is a lot better. It's just the first game of the season. Yeah, we lost. It's a shame. 37 to go, and I'm sure we're in for one hell of a roller coaster.
Yeah, absolutely. And I honestly don't think we'd have it any other way. So here we go. And it's a long season, still 38 games. It will be compressed a little bit, but I think part of what we have to do is just make sure we stay with the team. Don't give up on the team yet. It's, we stuck with them through 9-0, right? And I'm going to say it just so the commentators, it doesn't hurt so much if I say it. So we stuck with them through that. We can stick with them through a fairly poor performance against a stubborn Crystal Palace team. And I think that's just what it is. But Tom, as always, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. I appreciate you coming on. If people want to follow you on Twitter, they can do that at T214Murray. They can also follow the Under the Lights podcast at _Saints on Twitter. And I don't want to like steal your thunder, but like you got a guest coming on this week. If you want to tell people about it, you can. If not, I'll cut this and it'll be fine.
I know, we're very excited. We've got Joe Prince Wright, who works for, he's lead writer at NBC Sports. So we've got him coming on. He's going to be talking about NBC and what they do with the Premier League in the USA. And also he's very much a Southampton fan. So we'll be chatting all things Saints. So yeah, looking forward to having him on the show. But Matt, thank you very much for having me on again. It's always a pleasure to come and talk. And hopefully next time we'll be talking on the back of a win.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, enjoy talking to JPW about JWP and everything else. And we'll have you back on here again. And until then, just thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much.
And that does it for this week's episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed it. Special thanks goes out to this week's guest, Tom Murray. You can find him on Twitter at T214Murray. You can also get in touch with the Under the Lights podcast at _Saints. Those 2 links plus more, including Alan March Sport, are all in the show notes.
If you know of a football fan who is blind or partially sighted who you think would benefit from the audio description commentary, please pass that information along. It is a really big part of what Tom gets to do when we get fans back in the stadium. The show is supported by a number of people on patreon.com/SFC Delivery. If you would like access to a private chat, priority for having your questions answered on the show, the occasional bonus episode, and a little bit more, please head over to patreon.com/SFC Delivery and sign up. The show is also partnered with the Southampton Page. You can find them on Twitter at Southampton Page and on Instagram at Southampton Page 1. And there you can stay up to date with everything that's going on around Southampton Football Club. And maybe instead of the day-to-day news, you'd like to get in touch with the history and culture of the Southampton Football Club. For that, you can head on over to the Saints Archive, the other partner of the show. Links to both of those are in the show notes. The logo for the show is done by Matt Beeling of the We Are Southampton page on Instagram. And all music comes courtesy of the Free Music Archive at freemusicarchive.org. The intro song that you heard at the top of the show was Epic Song by Boxcat Games, and the end of show credits that you're listening to right now is Aim is True by Poddington Bear. That does it for this week, but we will, of course, be back next week. And hopefully we have a couple of wins to talk about, or at least, something more exciting than what we saw this week. But either way, until then, we're together.